Inflation rate came in at 8.3%. The stock market nosedived. People are shocked by their grocery bills. What can you do better and faster?
Well, first of all, let's put this in perspective. Inflation rate month to month was just an inch, hardly at all.
You're not arguing that 8.3 is good news.
No, I'm not saying it is good news, but it was 8.2 or 8.2 before. I mean, it's not. I can make it sound like all of a sudden, my God, it went to 8.2%. It's
the highest inflation rate, Mr. President, in 40 years.
I got that, but guess what we are? We're in a position where, for the last several months, it hasn't spiked. It has just barely. It's been basically even.
Yeah, Jack, you see, the Federal Reserve bankers were stealing a lot of money from you before, and now they're just stealing a little bit from your savings. Therefore, it's okay. That's pretty much the translation of what he just said. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Rudowski here. We are Change.org. And man, oh man, do we have some bombshells from the Biden administration and their very eye-opening 60-minute interview, which had a lot of surprises. We're going to be breaking that down. His statements related to Russia, Taiwan, China, and a major declaration that, of course, is going to have far-reaching impacts on everyone. That is definitely worth revisiting. We're going to be talking about that, plus a lot more, as well as some local news, all on this independent media broadcast. If you like the shirt that I'm wearing right now, you could get it on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. And as Biden is cheerleading your continued economic suffering and essentially you being robbed blind by the central powers that be, we have to understand that these are one of many consequences by this administration that has literally been wreaking havoc on the American middle class. Blue-collar workers, the poorest people in this country, have been getting screwed over in more ways than one, not just with fiscal policies that, of course, have the government printing money out of thin air for their, of course, novelty projects that, of course, do nothing but, of course, waste your money, but also socially with the influx of immigration that was spurred on by the Biden administration, essentially welcoming people into this country, essentially fulfilling what Bernie Sanders called a Koch brothers billionaire plan, lowering working wages in the United States while, of course, rising the cost of living. This, as over the past weekend, Martha's Vineyard decided to deport their only source of diversity, as the white women on that island were seen cheering and celebrating the departure of illegal immigrants that were sent there very graciously by, of course, the governor of Florida. And yes, this image is real. This white woman being exuded in happiness, seeing immigrants deported from her community and sent to a military facility, as they only had to deal with 50 immigrants. Meanwhile, in just 2 hours, Fox News was able to capture nearly 500 people sneaking across the border from, of course, Mexico to the United States into, of course, Texas, where there have been hundreds of thousands of individuals that the state there has had to deal with, help, and, of course, facilitate. Martha's Vineyard was calling in an emergency because of 50 people, and as shelters are filled up, average Americans are left to their own squalor and to, of course, the streets, where, of course, many of them find shanty towns where, of course, they now reside in. And the footage that you're watching right now is not from some kind of apocalyptic movie scene. No, it is from Tacoma, Washington, showing the severity of the situation for the average American that, of course, is just left on the streets. This as crime is becoming more and more unavoidable, as New Orleans has now just taken America's #1 position for the murder capital of the United States, essentially even having a higher homicide rate than some war zones in the world. This as criminals are given a free pass after a free pass, essentially being let out of jail for what is essentially causing chaos in the streets of major urban democratic areas, which are erupting with absolute insanity. This man from a video that we played you in yesterday's video, by the way, it was just released without bail after going on a rampage after being rejected by a young woman, which he then threatened with an axe. Yes, these are the scenes that average people are subjected to, as of course the politicians that instituted these policies are too busy insider trading than, of course, to focus about the actual problems that they have caused everyone else. This, as the New York Times surprisingly did a very good job detailing 97 members of Congress that have made record profits in almost perfectly timed trades on companies that are influenced by their committees inside of Congress. And as job jobs are disappearing, housing becomes more expensive, rent unpayable, food too expensive to eat, crime too serious to unavoid, it's good to know that our cushy, fat, bureaucratic Beckys inside of Congress are able to cheat the system to at least get some coins and money with the sinking ship that is the United States empire. Some would say that this is an inside job. Some would say that this is fourth or fifth generational warfare. Whatever it is, it's not good for you, the future of this country, your children, and of course everyone else, which we will be discussing in great detail on LukeUncensored.com. There is some new bombshell information that is definitely going to be worth talking about, that we're going to be getting into great detail later on today on yet another video only exclusively available for members on our own platform, where we get to talk about what we want. It is not a family-friendly show. It will be a show about some spicy, hot topic issues that we cannot discuss here on this particular platform. This is one of the few ways that we could get the deeper information out there to the general public, go down the rabbit hole a lot further, and explain things a lot better with no restriction on our own platform, with a forum, 3 master classes, exclusive merchandise, and exclusive access to events in the not-so-distant future that will be only available for members. Previously, you got entry for free to mega conferences, comedy shows, personal meet and greets. All of that will be happening a lot more, all by just simply being a member of LukeUncensored.com. All of this, plus a lot more, for just 50 cents a day. If you haven't signed up yet, what are you waiting for? Click the link down in the description below right now and sign up. Now, very interestingly, the current president of the United States gave an interview to 60 Minutes 5 days ago, which is now being released right now, that has absolutely shocked a lot of people, and that's because there was a lot of major bombshells within this interview, which most likely probably had scripted questions, but still revealed a lot, as of course the President of the United States couldn't run away from the interviewer, and in many instances had to speak off the cuff. Now, are these legitimate statements made by this administration, by the powers that be, or are these larger statements slip-ups? Now, of course, there was a lot of propaganda in this interview, and very interestingly, Joe Biden was actually asked about his son, Hunter Biden, that of course is known for his absolute corruption with foreign countries like China, Ukraine, and many others that of course he had business dealings with that greatly benefited him and the Biden family. But still, for some reason, Joe Biden, during this 60 Minutes interview, insisted that Hunter, quote, did not cause any conflicts for the United States with his foreign business dealings, and he even went on to praise him for, quote, overcoming addiction. Now that right there is just an absolute lie, even from, of course, the personal accounts of Tony Bobulinski that was able to corroborate clear misdoing and corruption by the Bidens that, of course, 60 Minutes didn't correct the current president of the United States on. Whether it's the big guy comment, the chairman comment, the usage of Air Force 2, the corruption of the Chinese government-connected corporations that they worked with, there's a lot of things that 60 Minutes could have countered the U.S. president on, but they decided not to in their very soft-hand approach. During this interview, the President of the United States also admitted that his student loan order is illegal, which of course transfers up to $1 trillion in student loan debt to taxpayers without any kind of congressional approval. And more importantly, during the interview, when they decided to get into foreign policy, the President of the United States also pledged direct U.S. war with China over Taiwan, a very big deal that of course would spark another major global conflict between the East and the West, saying specifically that the United States would defend Taiwan from an attack by China. This of course contradicting a lot of statements made by his administration saying the opposite of this, which of course sends out a very conflicting message to the world. When asked specifically about the president of Russia and the threat of a possible nuclear war, which is there, as even according to Mark Milley, the chances of Russia using a small nuclear nuclear device, it has been increased. There's a big, quote, possibility for the conflict in Ukraine to intensify, as according to Mark Milley, the war is not going too well for Russia right now. Joe Biden specifically responded by just simply saying, don't, and not really offering a lot of other kind of understanding or direct position of the United States on this larger, intense situation, which right now, by the way, could be one reason why the European Commission is seeking emergency powers right now in order to force companies inside of Europe to make, quote, key products and stockpile goods for a crisis. Another reason could be because of the energy shortage that, of course, was deliberately done by the European politicians there, which also is a direct result of the conflict in Ukraine. But whatever the situation, I would definitely not want to find myself in Europe this winter and the next coming winter, as of course the situation there is very tumultuous and set to get a lot more tumultuous from here. But one of the biggest statements made by, of course, the President of the United States on this 60-minute interview is that the sickness from the last 3 years is officially over, according to him. Yes, just right before the midterm elections, the President of the United States, on a TV show that didn't air until 5 days until he said it, declared that the sickness is over. No official announcement, no parade, no official statement, no primetime broadcast, no victory speech, just a casual answer at a car show during a scripted TV interview. Now, of course, a lot of people are surprised here, as of course, this sickness was used by this administration to, of course, transfer the wealth, along with the previous administration, from some of the poorest people in this world towards the richest people in this world. This sickness was used for political purposes by some very sinister human beings for their own personal political benefit on behests on the suffering of the masses. And now, nonchalantly, the president just says, yeah, it's over. And we have to say, is it? As of course, today, 850 more teachers and aides in the New York City school system were just fired for not complying with the health mandates of that draconian city, essentially discriminating against people for their own personal medical decisions that, of course, should be theirs and not extorted and manipulated by central forces and governments that have been using a sickness for a larger compliance test of the citizenry. And it's not just teachers, it's also a lot of other government officials, police officers, firefighters being fired all throughout the United States, students being denied entry into schools as they're forced to comply without dated mandates that absolutely make no sense at all. We're going to get into a deeper dive into that on LukeUncensored.com, especially with the latest blockbuster study coming out of Japan. But for the president to conveniently declare that it's all over when it's clearly not, shows us that these policies are extremely unpopular. No one really wants them. No one really likes them. And the vast majority of people are still remembering the suffering brought on by, of course, politicians against them because of the excuse that was this sickness. And again, for Biden to drop all of this is very politically convenient for him, but let us not forget the administration that has led us to this utter chaos and destruction of our modern day society. The previous administration, also to blame, absolutely. This one is in power and probably not for that much long. As of course, on that 60-minute interview, Biden even suggested that he might not run in 2024. And with the way that his administration is going, I see that as a reality, especially with his cognitive decline. That's just my own personal opinion and perspective. What do you think? Who's going to be running in 2024? Let us know down in the comment section below. If you thought I said anything wrong or saw something from a perspective that was incorrect, let me know also down in the comment section below. If you liked it, like this video, and more importantly, share it with your friends and family members, as of course, this is one of the few ways that these videos still get out there to the general public. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. I got one more video coming your way on some real big bombshell information, especially when it comes to the mandates and the larger discrimination plot against the average American on LukeUncensored.com. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and this is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more.